Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Maher. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Twilight Tuesday on Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today we talk about hot or controversial topics in the Star Wars universe. And today we're going to talk about Rey and the fact that she is powerful. But before we get to that, Disney has announced that there will be a new trilogy of Star Wars movies that will be released in 2022, 2024, and 2026. This was just announced, I believe, today. Now, what they are is not known. However, it was reported that the Rian Johnson, who directed The Last Jedi, is involved, and also Benioff and Weiss, the showrunners of Game of Thrones, are involved. Now, there was a report that they were working together on this, but not much is known. This is exciting news. If we take what Kathleen Kennedy said recently at Star Wars Celebration, these films will explore parts of the Star Wars timeline that we are not familiar with. And these will be released in December of each of those years, which I think is wise because I think one of the problems with Solo was the release date. So hopefully they'll have better luck with these films. And if the reports are true, it will be interesting to see if they explore parts of Star Wars that we are not familiar with, such as in the past or in the future of Star Wars. My hope is it will be in the past, so we can explore an era that we are completely unfamiliar with. So that being said, let's jump into Rey. Now, let me just preface this by saying I'm just going to give you my thoughts on Rey. I am not telling you what you should believe or trying to put down people who have a different view. Now, we are not going to be talking about what the trolls have to say. We are going to be talking about some discussions that people have had that are actually well thought out. Trolls, I don't think, make rational arguments. But there are many fans who feel that Rey is too powerful. And to be clear, anyone who feels that way is not automatically some kind of troll. We can't immediately run around saying, oh, they're just sexist. Could sexism play a part in it? Well, I'm sure it does. But I think that most of the Star Wars fans, that is not an issue. So let's talk about it. Many fans feel that Rey is able to do a lot of great things without really any training. Well, let's talk about it. First of all, Rey is a very skilled individual. That is true. She can speak several languages. She can understand droid language. She can understand Shiriwook, the Wookiee language. She's pretty good in a fight. She's a good mechanic. And she's a good pilot. And the Force is strong with her. Now, I think as we've seen with like Anakin Skywalker and Luke Skywalker, having a Force sensitivity does naturally seem to how shall I phrase this? Heighten other abilities. Anakin was able to fly a pod racer when no other humans could because of his force sensitivity. Luke was a good pilot because of his force sensitivity. And the same is probably true for Rey. Now, the various skills that she has are there, and I think it makes sense given the life that she's living. However, I think that that's probably a discussion for another day. But I do think that they could have probably done a better job. I think they could have done a better job in The Force Awakens of showing her skills. Such as showing her flying something before the escape from Jakku. But going back to her Force powers, here's how I see it. I believe that in many ways we are looking at the Force in an incorrect manner. The Force is powerful and uses those who are Force sensitive as conduits for its own power. Let me use an example. A Catholic priest is ordained to the priesthood. The priesthood, in Christian theology, is God's power. It is not the power of that priest, or that minister, or that pastor, or what have you. God uses them as conduits for His power. It is not for the priest to boast and say, that's my power. I'm powerful. They are not powerful. God is. So let's apply this to Star Wars logic. The Force is powerful. The individual Force user is not powerful of their own accord. They are a channel for the Force, a conduit. Now, dark side users tend to be a little full of their own powers. You know, Anakin says, you underestimate my power. He says that to Obi-Wan. And during the battle on Mustafar. This demonstrates, I think, the hubris of the dark side. And similarly, I do believe that the dark side of the Force uses people, but they are convinced of their own strength. Though, you know, it's an interesting discussion about, is the Force, what is the Force? Is the Force the light side or the dark side, or both? That's a discussion that would take a lot of debate, I think. So I believe that in a way the Force knew it was out of balance. Luke had cut himself off from the light side and was not there to preserve harmony and balance in the Force. Supreme Leader Snoke and his apprentice Kylo Ren were, like many dark side users, using the Force to manipulate the natural order to their own ends. Therefore, in order to create equilibrium, just like it did with Anakin Skywalker, the Force chose Rey as the conduit through which it could work its power. So I believe that Rey is powerful because the Force has chosen her to restore balance to the galaxy in the absence of Luke Skywalker. Also, as far as training, let's talk about one particular scene. And that is when Rey lifts the rocks to rescue the Resistance members at the end of The Last Jedi. Many people have disagreed with this scene, saying that she can't be that powerful, as she has not had the training to do such a thing. Well, when Rey leaves Ahch-To, which is where Luke is, she takes the sacred Jedi text with her. That is a detail that some have missed in the movie. Yoda did not burn the text. He burned the tree. Let me just detour for a second. Yoda says, quote, "But that library contained nothing the girl Rey does not already possess." Close quote. I think Yoda's throwing us a fast one. He doesn't say those books don't contain things that she doesn't need. Well, there's a double negative in there, so let me put it in simpler terms. Some people have interpreted that scene to mean Yoda's saying, "Oh, Rey doesn't need to learn anymore. She already knows it." I do not believe that that is at all what the scene means. Yoda knew that Rey had taken the books. He burned the tree to teach Luke a lesson about letting go of the past, and chiding Luke for not telling Rey the lessons he learned because of his own failure. So I think what Yoda is saying is that library already... how shall I phrase this? Because it's very tricky wording. Rey still needs to learn out of those books. I think Yoda is basically saying, "Oh, by the way, Luke, Rey took the books. So there's nothing in the tree that she needs because she already took it." That's how I read the scene. And so I think that Rey is studying with those books. Now, we don't know how long hyperspace journeys take. But the next time we see Rey after she leaves Ahch-To, she is closing a drawer in the Falcon. Later, in the end of the movie, Finn opens that same drawer, and that's when we see the Jedi texts. It is possible that Rey was reading those texts on the hyperspace journey, giving her some insight on how to lift those rocks. That's one possibility. The other possibility, you may recall from The Empire Strikes Back, is that Yoda's having Luke practice lifting some boulders. And Luke's having a hard time getting one of the boulders. I think because his concentration is a little off. But then, when his X-Wing starts to sink in the swamp, Yoda says, "Well, you should go and lift it out." And Luke's like, "Well, lifting rocks is one thing, but this is totally different." To which Yoda responds, "No, no different, only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned." Basically, I think what this means is if you have the will to do it, you can do it. Luke couldn't lift the X-Wing out of the swamp, not because he wasn't powerful enough, but because he didn't believe that he could. After Yoda lifts the X-Wing, Luke comes over and says, "I don't believe it." And Yoda says, "That is why you fail." So I believe that Rey believed that she could lift those rocks, and did. Now, in terms of the training, I think that we forget. Remember in the original Star Wars film, Luke spent, what, 5 minutes training with a laser remote and the lightsaber. That's the only training we see him do in the Force in that movie. And later he's able to use the Force to dodge Darth Vader in the Death Star trench and guide his torpedoes to blow up the Death Star. After what seemed like 5 minutes of training. Now, yes, there are some legitimate arguments about, Rey maybe didn't spend a lot of time training. But I believe that the Force is using her, that she believed in her own, had the faith that she could do what needed to be done. And maybe she studied out of those Jedi texts. So I think that perhaps we are looking at the Force and people's ability in the Force in the wrong way. So these are just my thoughts. I do think that you could make an argument that Rey is maybe overpowered. But as I said, I don't think it's her power, it's the Force using her. And the Force is able to use her also when she saves the Resistance members. The Force itself, I think, realizes that if the Resistance dies, any hope for balance in the Force is lost. They're the spark that will light the fire, as they often say. And the Force, I think, is using Rey to accomplish these things that may seem unbelievable to us, but it's doing it because the Force knows that with Rey, it can restore the balance that has been lost. So those are my thoughts on Rey's power. My name is Brendan Mara. Thank you so much for tuning in to Twilight Tuesday on Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.